My name is Mary Gonzalez, and I'm an educational diagnostician. I was also a former reading teacher and have had training in Orton Gillingham reading programs.
And I am Marisela Guerrero. I am the District Dyslexia Specialist. I have worked with students for 19 years and have provided dyslexia instruction for the last 14 years. My trainings follow the Orton Gillingham curriculum for both English and Spanish dyslexia instruction. In this session, Mary and I will be discussing what is dyslexia and how it affects learning. Before we talk about the reading difficulty that is dyslexia, it would be helpful to understand a little about reading itself. Speaking is a natural skill. Babies are born with brains that are hardwired for language, and they learn to talk by being around others. Reading is different. Humans were speaking for about 30,000 years before writing was invented, so as a species, our brains had time to evolve hardwired structures for spoken language. Because writing is so relatively new, the species has not had time to develop a separate reading center in the brain. Think of the reading brains of children as being under construction. It is a complex process because the brain is being rewired by making new connections between neurons or nerve cells. These connections are making neural highways between the spoken language and visual areas of the brain. Since the process is not natural, it does not happen rapidly. Years of practice and instruction are required. But every time this new skill of accessing language by sight is practiced, the network connections get stronger and reading happens more easily. Eventually, for a skilled reader, a word can be read in less than half a second. This complex reading process begins by connecting sounds in spoken language with printed letters or letter patterns, and then keeping them in the right order so that a word can be recognized or figured out. If a word has to be sounded out, it is known as decoding, which means to take out of a code. The code in this case is the alphabet. Letters are symbols representing sounds. The brain also has to connect individual words and then sentences in such a way that meaningful understanding or comprehension is made. Finally, the whole process has to happen with fluency. That is the ability to read words, sentences, or passages effortlessly and automatically enough so that little attention must be paid to recognizing or figuring out the words. That allows the reader's mind to concentrate on understanding what is being read. If the reading is too slow or filled with too many mistakes with words, understanding can be lost. What is dyslexia? The following video will describe how a child experiences dyslexia, what dyslexia is and what it is not, and how to intervene for dyslexia.
Take a moment to read the following. How was that? Frustrating? Slow? What were those sentences about? They're actually a simulation of the experience of dyslexia, designed to make you decode each word. Those with dyslexia experience that laborious pace every time they read. When most people think of dyslexia, they think of seeing letters and words backwards, like seeing B as D and vice versa, or they might think people with dyslexia see saw as was. The truth is, people with dyslexia see things the same way as everyone else. Dyslexia is caused by a phonological processing problem, meaning people affected by it have trouble not with seeing language, but with manipulating it. For example, if you heard the word cat and then someone asked you, remove the C, what word would you have left? At. This can be difficult for those with dyslexia. Given a word in isolation like fantastic, students with dyslexia need to break the word into parts to read it. Fan-tas-tic. Time spent decoding makes it hard to keep up with peers and gain sufficient comprehension. Spelling words phonetically like S-T-I-K for stick and F-R-E-N-S for friends is also common. These difficulties are more widespread and varied than commonly imagined. Dyslexia affects up to 1 in 5 people. It occurs on a continuum. One person might have mild dyslexia, while the next person has a profound case of it. Dyslexia also runs in families. It's common to see one family member who has trouble spelling, while another family member has severe difficulty decoding even one-syllable words like catch. The continuum and distribution of dyslexia suggest a broader principle to bear in mind as we look at how the brains of those with dyslexia process language. Neurodiversity is the idea that because all our brains show differences in structure and function, we shouldn't be so quick to label every deviation from the norm as a pathological disorder, or dismiss people living with these variations as defective. People with neurobiological variations like dyslexia, including such creative and inventive individuals as Picasso, Muhammad Ali, Whoopi Goldberg, Steven Spielberg, and Cher, clearly have every capacity to be brilliant and successful in life. Those with dyslexia can physically change their brain and improve their reading. With an intensive multisensory intervention that breaks the language down and teaches the reader to decode based on syllable types and spelling rules, the brains of those with dyslexia begin using the left hemisphere more efficiently while reading, and their reading improves. The intervention works because it locates dyslexia appropriately, as a functional variation in the brain.
Individuals with dyslexia have difficulties learning and using written language. While spelling can appear jumbled at times because students have trouble recalling letter symbols for sounds and forming memories for words, it is a misconception that people with dyslexia read backwards. The following are some of the other challenges that dyslexics face. Difficulty reading words in isolation. Difficulty accurately decoding unfamiliar words. Difficulty with oral reading, meaning reading can be slow, inaccurate, or labored without prosody, without natural expression. And lastly, difficulty spelling. It is important to note that individuals demonstrate differences in degree of impairment and may not exhibit all the characteristics listed here. Stay tuned at the end for resources including this handout on the common risk factors associated with dyslexia by grade level.
The primary reading and spelling characteristics of dyslexia result from the deficits in specific cognitive processes. Cognitive processes are how the mind uses language, learns and remembers information, attends, problem solves, and reasons. For students with dyslexia, the problem typically is difficulty with the cognitive process of phonological awareness, which is understanding that speech sounds make up words and parts of words. Students may also have difficulty with the cognitive process of rapid naming. Rapid naming tasks measure how quickly a student is able to retrieve the name or label for an item, like an object, color, number, or letter from their mind. The ability to name things quickly is related to a student's ability to develop automaticity in reading subskills, like quickly recalling the sounds that are represented by letters or strings of letters. Rapid naming is often associated with difficulties initially learning the letters of the alphabet, reading words fluently, and reading text at an appropriate rate or speed. Some students may also have difficulty with the cognitive process of orthographic awareness. Orthographic awareness helps students perceive and remember the written symbols of language, like letter patterns, letter sequences, and the letters in whole words. Dyslexia is brain-based. Because dyslexia is one of the most well-researched learning disabilities, we know a lot about it, including these things. First of all, it's neurobiological, meaning that the problems associated with it are located in the brain. Those with dyslexia are thought to have differences in the development of neuron pathways for reading, as well as how those circuits are connected. Dyslexia often runs in families. So when information is gathered for an evaluation, it's always a good idea to share whether anyone else in the immediate or extended family has been identified with dyslexia or has had other reading or learning issues. People with dyslexia vary in the severity of its impact. Dyslexia can range from mild to moderate to severe, much like a person can have a mild cold, moderate bronchitis, or severe pneumonia. Because of that range, the signs of dyslexia fall along a spectrum, and identification will involve looking for a cluster of characteristics. No single characteristic will be a decisive indicator, but several taken together will point to the possibility of dyslexia.
As our opening slide showed, dyslexia exists all over the world in all languages. Even though the difficulties students experience are largely the same in each language, it manifests differently across languages. Spanish is a very transparent language, so Spanish speakers tend to have more difficulty with fluency, rapid naming, and phonological deficits, rather than reading words in isolation, reading nonsense words, and spelling.
Dyslexia affects learning. First of all, students with dyslexia often have less exposure to grade level words, which impairs their vocabulary, knowledge, and reading comprehension. To understand how this happens, let's talk about how a good reader builds vocabulary and knowledge that helps them with reading comprehension. Students in the early grades that understand the sounds of language have an easier time learning to read. Since good readers recognize words easily, they have a lot of mental energy left over to help them comprehend what they've read. These students then read more, which helps build vocabulary and knowledge. Early reading success helps good readers to learn more easily, and understand what they've read. On the other hand, because students with dyslexia struggle with the sounds of language, recognizing words is more difficult and takes more effort. Therefore, they read less grade level text. Since their reading struggles result in less exposure to grade level words, they learn less vocabulary. They have fewer opportunities to grow their knowledge through reading, which means they have fewer tools to help them understand what they've read. Let's discuss another way dyslexia affects learning. Students with dyslexia may have difficulty with written expression, in part due to their low spelling skills. Their writing may not be decipherable to teachers, parents, or peers because of their poor spelling. They may choose to write with simpler words that they can spell easily, making their writing bland. Students with dyslexia may also have difficulty taking notes in class because they're concentrating on how to spell words. Since they are concentrating on spelling, they don't have much mental energy left to focus on understanding the subject matter being taught. The students with dyslexia may fall behind because they can't keep up with note-taking, or they may come home with notes that aren't helpful because the notes are not legible due to the misspellings.
Kids with dyslexia have average to above average intelligence. That's why, as teachers, we are often left scratching our heads trying to figure out why our bright students are having so much trouble learning to read. Students with dyslexia may exhibit some of the following strengths. They are great problem solvers. They can see the big picture, show creativity in solving all kinds of problems, can think outside the box, and can see how things fit together. They have impressive comprehension skills. Many students with dyslexia seem to have an incredible ability to take in information, even while multitasking. The very text that might have given your child untold frustration to read may stick with him or her forever if heard in audio format. Their critical thinking skills are very strong. They see connections between pieces, ask the right questions, and can separate facts from assumptions. They have good verbal skills. They will tell you exactly what the problem is and how you can go about solving it. They are also quite considerate of other people's thoughts. They have creative skills. Dyslexics can really envision a fantastic view of the world. They make great use of their imaginations, hence all the artists, actors, and authors with dyslexia. They have a keen sense of curiosity and interest. And they have strong visual spatial skills. They are good at thinking quickly and visualizing 3D structures. This is not an exhaustive list of all dyslexic students' strengths.
Accommodations may help your child. Accommodations are changes to materials, actions, or techniques, including the use of technology, that help students with disabilities access and participate in a meaningful manner in grade level or course instruction. We discussed earlier that dyslexia may affect learning in different ways. First of all, they may have less exposure to grade level words, which impacts their development of vocabulary, background knowledge, and reading comprehension. Access to written grade level text may be achieved through oral accommodations. These accommodations may look like oral reading of directions or written materials. Students may also be provided access to text-to-speech technology and audiobooks. Secondly, dyslexia may affect a child's written expression skills. We discussed previously that poor spelling may make a student's writing difficult to read. Students may be slow to write because they're concentrating on how to spell words, or their writing may be bland because they use small words that are easy to spell. Writing may be supported with word banks, spelling aids, and note-taking assistance. Students may be provided electronic spellers, electronic dictionaries, speech-to-text technology, a copy of class notes, or fill-in-the-blank note-taking guides.
For more information, visit the DISD Dyslexia Expo website or our DISD Dyslexia homepage. Also, feel free to contact us directly.